Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wellness Matters. I am Heather Caroccio, and this is a place where we discuss all things wellness, basically mind, body, and spirit. And when we work on all three of these things, that's what creates wellness. My intention for this podcast is to help you get curious. We are always a work in progress. Getting curious is the first step. So today, I have such an amazing guest. I have only known of her for a couple months now, but I've met with her one other time besides this podcast, and I told her I want to be her BFF, and I'm hoping she wants to be mine. And so yeah, I am sitting down today with Tina Zion. You can find her on her website, tinazion.com. She is a fourth generation psychic medium. She specializes in medical intuition, and she also teaches it internationally. But she's got so many other things on her resume, like being a hypnotherapist. I mean, there's so many things that I can't wait to dive in with Tina about. But a quick little side note. I have been doing podcasts on, all things wellness, like I had said, for the past couple of years now. And I just kept getting like these intuitive pings that I need to have somebody on here to explain how much our thoughts actually make up the life that we live, but also how it affects our physical body. I have read several books on this concept. And when I finally came across Tina's book, How to Be a Medical Intuitive, I knew, holy cow, I've got to get this person on my podcast because it's all the things that I guess intuitively I knew. I didn't have like a background. I didn't have a teaching on it, but I just knew in my bones that there is some correlation to the thoughts that we are having all day long and how that could possibly be affecting our physical body and also our happiness. So Tina, thank you so much for being here today. And I can't wait to dive right in. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I love to do this with you. So thank you so much. I have no idea what you're going to ask me, but I'm ready.
I know sometimes I'll like jot down some questions to give to the person ahead of time. So poor Tina's in the hot seat. But I don't know. I do kind of like the conversation. I feel like I could ask you a million questions. So I'm going to try to keep it at a beginner's mindset and be thorough with you and these questions. So like I said,
with thoughts. Yeah, you already began with, the thoughts affect our physical body. So
oh yeah,
that's a good start.
Well, you know what? Before we go into that, because that is one of my main topics, I was just wondering if you could give us a quick background on how you became a medical intuitive and what actually is a medical intuitive.
Oh, that's even better. Okay. Um, I didn't realize at first, actually, for many years, that I was a fourth generational intuitive medium. And I spent a lot of time with my great grandmother on my mother's side. And so it comes down. My great grandmother was very active in the spiritualist church. She did readings, she was a medium. And it came down through the fourth generation down to me. I spent a lot of time with her until she passed on when I was about 11, because this was my great grandmother. Mm-hmm. And on my father's side, actually, my grandparents, that was my father's parents, were very active in the spiritualist church. And my uncle did readings, so my father's brother was very active. So I actually had it come down through father and mother's side. But here's one of the main things I always want to tell people is that did not give me special gifts. My family does not have a special gift. What I did grow up with, though, was that it became normal. Mm-hmm. It was normal to know who was ringing the phone before you looked to see who it was, before you picked up the phone. It was just very, very normal. And it was very, very normal for us to talk about deceased people that we have seen or talked to. So I did grow up with that. But, a lot of really well-known intuitives and mediums always say they have a special gift. And really, we don't, because everybody is already created and wired to do this. So I always want to get that out there to
Yeah.
everybody that it's not special gift.
I it's hard to not think that way because I like to think that I'm somewhat intuitive, but I guess like you said, I did not have like that type of upbringing where we discuss that kind of way of life. So through reading your books and just other books and knowing, this was like one of my questions I was going to ask you. So everyone comes into this world being intuitive and having all these capabilities and whatnot. By the time we're like 3, 4, 5, all of those gifts are kind of squashed, would you say?
I would say squashed is a good word for it. Yes,
Yes. And
good
so
word.
every once in a while there's a couple of kids running around where it didn't totally get squashed, and so they're the ones that tend to have these abilities of mediumship that are pretty strong compared to, I would say, the rest of society. Is that what you're saying?
Well, just because they were squashed maybe in childhood, because a lot of times, here's an example. I know of a child who drew their family, and that was the assignment, in elementary school to draw a picture of your family. Excuse me. And he drew his mother with purple hair. And the teacher said, now, your mother doesn't have purple hair. And what he was really seeing was her energy field. So it's those subtle things that really squash our ability to perceive energy around people and to perceive deceased people. But it doesn't mean it's squashed forever, because
Yeah.
most people did not grow up, which I found out finally. Most people didn't grow up with this normal
Right.
environment for it.
Right. And so therefore, I'm 42 years old, and I feel like things are turning on and becoming more powerful for me, but it is me intentionally working on it and trying to, I guess I shouldn't say working on it because I did a session with you and I shouldn't say that I'm working on it. I should just let it kind of be. But, um, again, because it's not like something that we're taught as young children to start observing the subtleties of life, then it kind of,
Yes.
you have to somehow awaken it all.
Well,
So,
and that's one of the things I really tell people that I mentor with and who take my courses is I really think I just help people notice the very subtle. So see, you already used that word subtle, and that's really what it is just noticing what's already there, but it's not on a physical, it's not solid like the chairs we're sitting in. It's very, very subtle, usually. And, when it boils down to it, I think that's really what one of the things I teach.
yeah, see, I teach preschool by day, and I now incorporate more of this kind of talking points with them to be more aware of, their surroundings and whatnot. But,
Oh,
you know,
excellent.
when I was growing up, and what I know is still in the curriculum today, when you go to quote unquote big kid school is what I call it, once you start going to kindergarten, we get, the five senses jammed down our throat for year after year after year. We only have five senses. We only have five senses. And
Mm.
I feel like that does like kind of a disservice to the non-physical senses that we have, that we're born with. So again, that there's the physical, and then there's the non-physical, but I feel like we don't talk about anything non-physical. Like you were just talking about an energy field or like an
Mhm.
aura. um, that we all have around us. Can you explain what somebody's energy field actually is?
Yes. No one ever asked me that question, so I love that. What we're really seeing or sensing, it's not just all about seeing, but it's about feeling and sensing each other's energy fields. And the energy field is our soul energy. The aura is really, our soul is an energetic being, and it's eternal, and it's so large it can't squish down inside of a physical body and stay under our skin. And our skin's not an insulation like around an electrical cord. Our soul energy just emanates out beyond us, and it is affected. It changes all the time. Everybody thinks they're struggling to see an aura because, and this is the reason, it changes with every thought, it changes with every emotion, it changes constantly, and it's shifting and moving because it's really, our eternalness is very electrical. We are electrical beings. Every thought that we think, because you had mentioned thought a little bit ago, every thought that we think is actually on an electrical signal that every thought, every word, every sentence, every thought, that electrical signal rushes through our physical body, giving us a signal, and then it rushes out into our aura, the energy field, or our soul, and then it rushes into the room and out beyond in our neighborhood and in the universe. So that's why thought is very, very important. And a lot of times, if someone who's been thinking very negative or ruminates over negative situations, that will tend to congregate in our physical body somewhere. And that is one of the causes of illness.
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely I'm not a doctor, but I feel that it feels so true to me that especially now that I'm so much more conscious, I've been conscious of making sure that my thoughts are I try to make them be things that I'm hoping to, I guess, manifest in my life, but not necessarily always manifesting. Just I want to feel good, I want to feel happy and um positive. So yeah, I do. I try to pay attention to every little thing that's going on in my
Mm.
mind. I mean, it's like a full-time project though. So at first it seems very overwhelming, but it gets easier as the day
Well,
goes.
because a lot of people think they're not in charge of their thoughts and their emotions because, oh, people will say, well, I can't stop being negative because I grew up in a negative family. It's
Mhm.
not true. You are an individual within a family. And so, yes, we can train ourselves to think more positive. So, another thing I think I help people realize is how to be in charge of themselves and not being run by old family thoughts or old family beliefs, things like that.
Yeah. I just met with a friend a couple weeks ago doing a podcast on taking back your sovereignty. And that was one of the things that we talked about was, you know, when we're younger, I think it's a lot harder because we are, hearing the thought patterns of our parents all the time, or our teachers, or our
Yes.
coaches, and then when we get older, though, it's like what you see on TV. It's the news channels, it's the doctors that you're talking to, it's and we stop hearing the intuition of ourselves because somebody else is telling us what we should be thinking, and then we kind of take that on versus um
Mm.
what
Hmm.
our own thoughts are, and so yeah, that podcast was really fun. Um so can you explain what exactly is a medical intuitive?
Hmm. A lot of people think that the medical intuitive, it's really basically a new term as well, but they think of it as just someone who focuses on the physical body and gets intuitive information about physical illnesses and things like that. But I take medical intuition so much farther. I take it into thoughts. I pick up emotions of people, and it's about the physical body. It's also about illnesses and struggles, but it's about struggles in life also, negative repeating patterns. Like somebody might say, gosh, I keep meeting boyfriends and they all tend to be abusive. And I just keep repeating that pattern. So, what I do, at least people tell me very differently, is it's about the physical body, but it's about lifestyle. It's about negative repeating patterns. And I take every single session when I was doing readings and healings into a healing, into a change. So I don't, I teach people how to do this now. And I teach, don't just give a person information, take action and help these people make a positive change. Because I kind of tortured myself forever about what the heck does healing mean. And a lot of people think it means stopping death. A lot of people think that, when in fact I've assisted people and really helped them to stop being afraid of their death when they are near their death time. the and that's a healing in itself. If you help someone release a burden or release a fear that they have, my goodness, that in itself is healing. And then as I studied myself for many years and I wrote my 3 medical intuitive books, I realized that there's like 8 categories of causes of illness and life struggles. So, I've taken it to that place too, where what is the cause of whatever is going on with the person.
Yeah, I just finished reading your book, How to Become Your Own Medical Intuitive, and I
Oh,
loved
good.
how you split it up into like 8 main categories. I mean, realistically, that just kind of really makes sense to me, because even though we're all different individuals, we all kind of have the same problems, and so they all kind of go in the same categories. We have a lot of the same thoughts, even though we're in a
Mhm.
separate vessel, we do tend to kind of have the same thoughts. And you had mentioned in your book that, our thoughts or our emotions and all that can create different issues going on inside the physical body. Um, like you say, certain emotions kind of congregate in different areas of the body, like different chakra
Mhm.
areas.
Yes.
You give a couple examples of, like, if somebody has maybe some trauma, like heartbreak or something like that, what could that possibly show up as in the body if it goes unresolved? If somebody has like a heartbreak and then they never resolve it, how can that show up in certain parts of the body? Like, would it just be in the chest area, or um how does that work?
Yeah, it depends on what they are doing with that moment in time that broke their heart. But symbolically, my guides will have shown me like a Valentine heart. And at first I'll think, oh, isn't that sweet? And then the image in my mind's eye goes, and
Right.
actually the heart breaks and falls into 2 pieces. And this, literally, I've seen someone who is to about to die because the cause was a broken heart. And how I perceived that was this image, and then the heart literally split in 2. But around in each of our energy centers, the chakras, the heart energy center, actually, all the energy centers tie into the spinal cord. So the heart ties into the vertebrae, thoracic 4 and 5, right in that area, straight through from the organ of the heart. And I have seen that where even in the spinal cord has died off. It's black as can be. So do you see that is sending such such prominent signals to our brain and our body, where it's even killing off a portion of a spinal cord.
Mm.
So I've seen that as well. Some other examples is people who are find themselves caught up in arguing all the time, maybe with their spouse or their kids or something. Current arguments tend to go to the bronchial tubes, and old unresolved anger tends to go to the liver. So that's, just a simple example of how certain issues with certain emotions tend to congregate. Like on our shoulders and the sides of our necks is really about responsibility. So people that have any issues on the right or left side of their neck and their shoulder, it's all about taking on too much responsibility, taking on responsibility of other people, things like that. So I'm trying to give you some simple
Yeah.
examples of how our thoughts create emotions, and a lot of times negative emotions. And the negative emotions tend to be sticky and thick and dense and heavy, those words. And so they tend to kind of start glomming into an illness somewhere in our physical body. So this is very, very real. And that is thought and emotion is one of the causes of illness.
Yeah. I after reading your book, started doing like a type of a body scan on myself, like seeing or sensing, I guess I can't see, but like sensing where I might be at a disconnect in my body. And there is, I talked to you about this when we met a couple weeks ago, but I'll just say it again. My left knee will act up and stuff, where I'm always sitting on the floor with the preschoolers, and I've done that. I was a kindergarten teacher before that, so I've been on the floor all the time. So part of me is like, is it just because I'm always on the floor and I sit crisscross applesauce, or or is it something deeper with that? But I think from reading your book, sometimes I reference the Louise Hay book too, where, she puts
Mhm.
stuff in the back of her book. If you have a certain ailment, you can look and see, is there something going
Yes.
on in your life that may be bringing that on? And I can't remember if it was with you or reading her book, but that the knee area can represent maybe not being so bendable, maybe, or something like that, like flexible.
Having a hard time being flexible with changes in life or things about to come up in life. All joints are in struggles that we have with our joints actually have a lot to do with being flexible in life. Oh, if something changed. Well, okay, I go with the change, kind of flow with the change. And if we don't, it tends to begin to congregate in certain joints in our body. And knees have a lot to do with, listen to some of our terminology. That surprise just took me to my knees. You
Mm.
see, the rug got pulled out from under me and landed on my knees. So we have, in our English language, we have a lot of phrases that are really about the thought, emotion, and body connection. And I love bringing that up because we're using phrases all the time
Right.
about that thought and emotion and body connection, and we have no idea that we're doing that.
Right. It's wiser than just some few words in a sentence, like
Yeah,
it actually means
yes,
something.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was another issue on my, like, the right side of my hip, but I can't remember what hip signifies. What does hip mean?
So about if you think about it, if you think of the human body, hips are about a foundation, about stability. It's the gives us the form, and it's also the first and second energy center chakra. It's in that area, which is about our upbringing, our childhood. Now, Now, the other thing I'd add to all this is it doesn't matter if we're male or female. Doesn't matter if our body's male or female. The left side of our body, when we have struggles with the left side of our body, it tends to be about issues with a female or females in our life or female characteristics. The right side of our body, whether we're male or female, tends to be about male characteristics or males in our life. And so that's also very, very telling too about what side of our body are we having issues with.
That's what I love so much about the two books that I read of yours. So I read the How to Be Your Own Medical Intuitive, but then also how you can start becoming an intuitive for others. And
Yes.
what your book is jam-packed with is examples of how to start accessing this intuition for yourself, but also you give so many pictures and just just pictures of the human body and where
Charts and
things might manifest
yes.
and how to start releasing it or even just figuring out where it came from,
Mhm.
and then how to release it. So your book isn't just really insightful information, it's also a how to start using this information for your betterment and for your friends and family if you wanted to do it on them. And that's, I would say, like the core of my podcast. I just hope that when people are listening, they're starting to get curious about maybe researching new ideas that they either one haven't heard of before or have maybe heard it in a different way, and they feel moved to finally say, you know what, I am going to start listening to what my body has to say, what these signals mean. And like I know this, it's weird, and I think I've given this example before. Because I teach preschool, we do goldfish a lot. I'll give them goldfish for snacks. Have you ever seen the crackers, the goldfish crackers?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time I eat them, because I love them, my nose starts running. And so I feel like it's an indicator that maybe I shouldn't be eating them. My body's saying there's something in that
Yes.
maybe I shouldn't be eating them.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and our bodies give us these examples all day, every single day, knocking for us to start paying attention.
Well, our
And
body's receiving thought and emotional things that are actually signals. So our body's receiving signals all the time, but it's also sending us signals, and that's what you're talking about. It's sending and receiving signals of information all the time. So yes, and you're picking up something about your goldfish there.
right. And I think one of the main takeaways from your two books that I read, which is still extremely hard for me to do, but I'm working on it, is when I am having a thought in my head, which is a question most of the time, like, why is this happening? Or why did I feel this way? You have said it numerous times in your book, and it's so true. We don't stop and actually listen to the answer. We just go on about 12 other different things. And
Yes.
I'm working so extremely hard. And to the listener that's listening to this, seriously start pausing and listening. And you call it, I love it too. I've been working on it with both my kids, the first thing that pops into your head, which is your direct connection to your intuition,
Yes.
not our ego side, right?
Exactly, exactly. If you pause, because we have chatter minds, chatter, 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 and we're talking, 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 and it's a matter of actually pausing, and in a split second later, take that instant pop of information. So I always say pause and take the pop, because if you take the pop of thought or an image, those two in particular, thought and image, that come in, into our awareness, it didn't have time. That's intuition. And the 2 seconds after that, our intellect jumps in, our ego jumps in, everything else jumps in. But in that pause and then split second of the pop of information, that's intuition.
And
Because our thinking mind didn't have time to get in there and get in the way yet.
right. And you say this over and over, over and over and over in the book. And it finally was hitting me on the side of the head, like, listen to what she's saying. That first pop that comes through, I was always like, that can't be my intuition. I just made that up. That can't be it, can it? And that was such a huge aha moment for me. You just kept saying it's always going to feel like you made it up, but that is
It will,
actually
it
your
will
intuitive thought.
never, yes, it will never stop feeling like you just made it up or like it's your imagination. It will never stop feeling that way. I've been seeing deceased people since I can remember, so 4 or 5 years old. And I thought I was making it up back then. And that's how it still feels now. So it will all, because we're dealing with the non-physical world. So it doesn't have that solid, feel or solid look. So, and people tell me all the time, Tina, that's the most important thing you ever said, was about take the pop, and it's always going to feel like imagination. I'm covered with goosebumps right now as you and I talk about it,
Those were
because
my
those are
two,
the
yes,
two
those are my
keys,
two
aren't
biggest
they?
takeaways from reading those
Yes.
two books.
Yes.
Tina has also written two books on Reiki, and I've had different people on here to talk about the energy healing of Reiki. And I am I'm Reiki 1 and 2 attuned. So I like to practice it on myself, my animals, and my loved ones and whatnot. Um, but you give a lot of, here's another really fun part about the book. I love this. I love when authors will that have clients that they've worked with and put them in the book, because that makes it so much more real, because whatever the client's saying, I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly how I feel. And so it gives a great example to the reader. But you give so many examples of real life situations that you've had with your clients throughout
Yes.
both of the books that um, I have read. And you've referenced Reiki in there, and how um, there's so many crazy, I don't even know if I should give it away for people that want to read it, but the things that you are capable of sensing and seeing during a session, well, when you used to work on people for a medical reading and whatnot, um, is there an example of a story that you'd like to share that maybe um made you question what you're doing, or how did I
Hmm.
just sense that? How did I just see that? And then show how it ends up working out, like the client somehow knew what you were doing while you were doing it. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Well, it's actually, it ties medical intuition in with Reiki, because the I at the time I didn't even know that there wasn't even a term medical intuition, but I was giving a lot of Reiki sessions clear back in the 90s, 1990s. I was giving a lot of Reiki sessions, and I was teaching Reiki and things like this. And all of a sudden, I was looking inside of a woman's lungs. Even though I had my hands on her head because she had a migraine headache, that I was suddenly pulled down and I was looking inside of her lungs. The second time it happened, I was giving Reiki again, and I began zooming around inside of another female, and I couldn't figure out, where am I? What am I seeing? And I was inside of her colon, and I actually was zooming around inside of her colon, and I found a group of very cancerous polyps. Now, what's important is, if we're not licensed, even though I'm a nurse, if we're not licensed to diagnose, we intuitives cannot diagnose. Don't let a diagnosis come out of your mouth. But what we can do is we can describe the look of it, the feel of it, the location of it. So I told her all that stuff. And I did not say the word cancer. And I did not even say the word polyps. And I drew a picture of it. And I asked her, I begged her, I said, please, please, please call your doctor today and insist on a colonoscopy. And I said, because there's this over here on your lower right abdomen, there is a place where the energy's not flowing, which was true. And it feels kind of bulky, which was true. And it's just dark. It's not bright like the rest of you. All of that was very, very true. And I told her the exact location. And the colonoscopy showed that she had 5 cancerous polyps, terrible, and I had those removed. And at that time, she was in her 70s, and she lived until she was in her late 80s, if not 90. And so I like it when I can give like medical validation. And a lot of times, medical intuitives, I'll get, that you have very low vitamin D, D is dog, and they'll say, oh, my labs just showed that. I just had labs last week, done, and you're exactly right. So if you want to learn medical intuition and do this for others, you will get all kinds of validation of how real this really is. It's real. And I love it when science shows that and proves
Yeah.
how real this is.
Well, you were an actual nurse before you decided to go more into, I guess, the subtle realms that in Reiki and all that, correct?
I have a psychiatric nurse. I'm board specialized as a psychiatric nurse. So I always worked psychiatric units in hospitals and stuff. And then I went into counseling, and I have been in private practice as a traditional mental health counselor for, gosh, probably 30 years now. And so I just began to include the rest of this Reiki and medical intuition in with counseling. So. Yeah, it all
What
just kind of blended together.
it's so fascinating. I just love hearing when people like they go down a career path, but then they like pick up little nuggets here and there and start using that into and like blending it into
Blending, yes.
their careers. Because somewhere in your book you had mentioned, hey, I'm curious about hypnotherapy. So I guess I'm just gonna become a hypnotherapist. I mean, I just found that to be so hilarious because you got all these other things going on. You're like, nope, I'm curious about this. So now I'm gonna put this hat on. So what interests you in hypnotherapy, and how did that kind of make you even more complex with what you're doing now?
I was always, always, always intrigued with assisting people to get in such a relaxed state that they actually get their thinking mind out of the way again. And I really began very quickly to specialize in past life regressions. And a lot of times, I have found now with medical intuition that the past life is actually one of the causes of the 8 causes that we are struggling with in our current life. So that, hypnosis and past life regressions just kind of folded in very, very wonderfully to medical intuition.
Yeah.
And people, they'll think they have to leave their current job to do this. And I would say, no, just allow it to merge together with what you're doing. I was, at one time, I was the head, a vice president over this huge, large mental health center. And on the Saturday, I thought I'm going to start doing some medical intuition, and that's really, how I did that at that moment. I didn't stop one to do the other. I just started to fit the two together, and then, the vice president job faded away, and now here we are sitting here talking about this very cool stuff. Very cool
Yes, I know.
stuff.
I can't get enough of it. I could literally talk forever on these topics. Um, is there anything that you would like the listeners to know, like a takeaway from all the experience that you've had that you feel everyone walking on this planet should think or maybe consider, feel, I don't know. Is there something that you would like to
Yeah.
share with the listeners?
Hmm. Well, as you're asking me that, yeah, a different thing kind of popped up. And I just added this to, I'm doing a second edition to my advanced medical intuition book. And this is one of the things I added is that the universe is speaking to us and signaling to us constantly. And so I just sat down and wrote down, well, what are all the ways that, the universe speaks to us? And I came up with 18 ways that the universe is sending us messages constantly. And, one of them is it comes through nature. I looked out the window, and granted, I live in the country, but I looked out the window and there was the largest coyote I have ever seen in this area. And so that was a signal to me. Birds will be a signal to us. Just all kinds of things in nature, in synchronicity. There are no accidents ever at all. And everything in life around us has meaning. Everything. And all we have to do is just stop and notice what the meaning is. Even one client sent me a bunch of pictures of clouds, and there were faces in the clouds. There was one with, it was as clear as a bell. It was an angel with great big wings. And we just simply need to notice the very, very subtle. It is there for us 24 hours a day. And the universe is sending us messages all the time.
I have this beautiful book. I can't even remember. I think it's called
Animal speaks.
Animal Speaks. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yes.
I wanted to go check it yesterday, but then it even happened again, like the last 2 or 3 days. I have been either seeing the tiny little ants or hearing it or seeing it in a book and all these things, whatever. I'm like, ants, 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 ants. So I gotta figure out, I want to go in that book. I do that all the time. Like I'll be like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
I've been seeing an owl, not an owl, that's hard to see. I don't normally see that, but like a hawk, for 3 days in a
Mhm.
row and in weird situations where I could not see it. And I tend to like look them up. And I had a dream the other day with crows in it, big crows, little baby crows, whatever. So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
wanted to find out the significance of
Well,
that. But now I want to know about ants. So I
well,
do.
here's what I'd say to you and your listeners. Before you go to a book, even Animal Speak or whatever other book, a lot of people go to books about dreams and what does this and that mean in dreams. What I would ask you and the listeners to do is, for example, the hawks and the crows and things like that, and the ants. How you receive the message is look at the qualities, look at the way each of these animals live.
Mm.
So like I was seeing cranes, the blue herons and all kinds of cranes all over the place. And I stopped and I thought, okay, now how do they live? Well, cranes stand in water and they wait for the nutrients. They wait for a fish to come by, they wait for a frog to come by. They don't work at it. They allow nourishment to come to them. And at that time, that message was fabulous for me because I was working myself nearly to death. And I had cranes flying over the hood of my car. They would come out from under bridges. It was because I wasn't getting the message. The second I stopped and I looked at how they live, that's the message, is how each of those animals live. And it's a signal to you in some way. And as soon as for the crane example, I didn't see another crane again from, months, months, months. I was seeing them every day. They were
Yeah.
like flying into my window, in my windshield. So that's how it works. So, and then you can go to a book and see. And, you'll get maybe a little more added
It's funny
information.
because when I was like, I need to go look up the meaning of the ants, whatever, I did have intuitive hits of what they're signifying to me.
Sure.
And which is that they carry on a load that's like 10 times the weight of them. Like they're carrying these pieces of food or whatever that weigh 10 times the amount of them, or maybe even
And
more.
yes, and they're very capable of doing them.
Yes,
So
and they're very
capable.
capable of it. And like I see them as like good little soldiers, and I do know that at times I do try to get through my daily tasks, and maybe due to many things that I think that have to be crossed off my to-do list. So
Mm.
yeah, it'll be
You
interesting
know
to
what? You know what else ants do? They work together with others, and one ant doesn't do all the work.
That's true. That's true. I like that.
See, there's another part of the message too.
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
I do try to, I've been really trying to manifest more of that, like co-creating with others to, um, not necessarily take some of the burden off of me, but to more minds means more ideas. So
Absolutely.
I have been like kind of calling that in too. Wow. See, we had this whole conversation about ants.
Yeah. See, that's how it goes. That's how it
I
is.
know. I know. I love it so much. Well, Tina, thank you so, so much for joining me today on this podcast. I am so looking forward to July, and it's only, what month is this? The end of March. Right. I'm like,
Yes.
what day is this? Because I'm going to go to the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, which I didn't
Oh,
even
excellent.
really know existed until you had told me about it. But I'm going to be taking one of Tina's in-person courses that you can find any of that information on her website. But also if you went to the omegainstitute.com, you would find that information as well. But I think my mom might be coming too.
Oh,
So
great. That's
yeah, we
great.
may have a little girls trip going down to Rhinebeck, and then learning about how to see dead people. No, just kidding. We're gonna
That'll
learn
be one
lots
of
of
the
things.
things. Yes.
Yes, yes.
That's only part of it, but
That's
yes, that
only
is a
part of
part of
it. But I cannot wait. And I was looking at the website and how tranquil it is there and peaceful, that I
it.
think I'm
Yes.
looking forward to that even more so. And like I saw that they have farm to table foods that they provide.
Yes.
I'm just
Big buffets. Yeah.
yes, it's everything that I love all in one area. So I am definitely looking forward to that. So definitely check out
Thank you.
Tina's books, check out her website. You can actually have a type of mentorship given by Tina, and take one of her classes, because you will be blown away. That's what I'm talking about with like getting curious. Don't just say, that's an interesting thought and let it go. Really start digging in and finding some answers for yourself. So yeah, thank you again, Tina, for being with me today. And thank you to the
Thank you.
listeners for listening. And I will be seeing you on the next podcast. So thank you again.